Hello students, today I am going to discuss about economies of scale. So today our concept is economies of scale. Economies of scale are the term that refers to the reduction of per unit cost through an increase in production value. Economies of scale are an economic term that means large entities, whether businesses, non-profit or governments, can reduce cost simply because of their size. This gives them a competitive advantage over smaller companies. For example, cost per unit can decreases as the volume of production increases for different reasons. First, fixed cost of production can be spread over a large number of units as the volume of units produced increases. For example, if the fixed cost is 1000 and produce 10 units, the fixed cost per unit is 100. But if the product 50 units, the cost per unit is only 20 rupees. Second, this can often save money by obtaining discounts for bulk purchases of raw resources used in production. Finally, costs may be reduced because the increase in value may justify the acquiring specialized equipment and specialized labor that leads to more efficiency. How economies of scale work? The economies of scale can be practices in the following areas. First one, technical economies of scale. Second one, specialization of the workforce. And third one, marketing economies of scale. And last one, fourth one, financial economies of scale. So first one, technical economies of scale. Large scale businesses can afford to invest in expenses and specialist capital machinery. For example, a supermarket chain such as Tesco or Reliance can invest in technology that improves stock control. It might not, however, be viable or cost efficient for a small corner shop to buy this technology. And second one, specialization of the workforce. Larger companies split complex production process into separate tasks to boost productivity. By specializing in certain tasks or processes, the workforce is able to produce more output in the same time. So next one, marketing economies of scale. A large firm can spread its advertising and marketing budget over a large output, and it can purchase its inputs in bulk at negotiated discounted prices if it has sufficient negotiation power in the market. A good example would be the ability of the electricity generators to negotiate lower prices when negotiating coal and gas supply contracts. The major food retailers also have buying power when purchasing supplies from farmers and other suppliers. So last one, financial economies of scale. Large firms are usually rated by the financial markets to be more credit worth and have access to credit facilities with favorable rates of borrowing. In contrast, smaller firms often face higher rates of interest on overdrafts and loans. Businesses quoted on stock market can normally raise fresh money more cheaply through the issue of shares. They are also likely to pay a lower rate of interest on new company bonds issued through capital markets. So next one, types of economies of scale. Economies of large scale production can be grouped under two headings. First one, internal economies of scale, and second one, external economies of scale. We shall first take internal economies of scale. The word internal is used here to denote the limitations of these economies to the firm itself. Internal economies are those which are often to a single factory or a single firm independently of the action of the other firms. Internal economies of scale. Internal economies results from the size of the company, no matter what industry it's in or market it sells to. For example, large companies have the ability to buy in bulk, thus lowering the cost per unit of the material they need to make their products. They can either use the savings to increase profits or pass the savings to consumers and compete on prices. There are five generally recognized types of internal economies of scale. So, types of internal economies of scale. First one, technical economies of scale. Second one, managerial or administrative economies. Third one, financial economies. Fourth one, marketing economies. Last one, fifth one, social economies. So, first one, technical economies. They are found mostly in plants and arise mostly because neither the capital cost nor the running cost of plants increase in proportion to their size. The main idea is to spread the fixed cost over a large output as possible, so average fixed cost decreases. Second one, managerial or administrative economies. Managerial or administrative economies arise because the same people can usually manage with bigger output. So, average administrative cost decreases when production increases. Large firms can employ specialists, which leads to the increase in efficiency. Next one, financial economies. Financial economies arise because, example, the interest rate for getting a loan is higher for smaller firms than for larger ones. This is because large firms have large assets and bank trust them more. It is also relatively easier for larger firms to raise their share capital by issuing shares. Next one, marketing economies. They are available both in purchase of raw materials and in selling of the products. A large firm may have a bulk discount when purchasing raw materials. In short of promotion, to large firms the average cost is smaller because the price of advertisement are the same for all firms. Social economies. They may be developed into two groups: those which build up the goodwill of the community and so attract customers, and those that develop the loyalty of the firm employers. So, second one, external economies of scale. External economies of scale mean a large company receives preferential treatment from government or other external source simply because of its size. For example, most states will lower taxes to attract large companies since they will provide job for their residents. A large a large real estate developer can often conceive a city to build roads and other infrastructure, saving those costs. Large companies can also take advantage of joint research with universities, lowering their own research expenses. Small companies just don't have leverage to take advantage of external economies of scale and thus may find it harder or at least more expensive to compete. However, they can band together and take advantage of geographic economies of scale by clustering similar businesses in a small area. For example, artist lofts, galleries and restaurants in a downtown, example, etc. External economies of scale arise when there is a growth in the size of the industry and are available for many firms in it. There are three main types of external economies. First one, economies related to a particular industry. Second one, economies related to industrialization. Third one, economies related to society. First one, economies related to a particular industry. They are derived from a concentration of the industry in one place and differ between industries. They might involve cheaper training facilities if many firms want to train their employees, or marketing economies when several firms want the same kind of raw materials. They can be realized through trade associations, which are producers unions, which can example advertise the industry generally, thus raising the revenue of all the firms included. Second one, economy is related to industrialization. If there is a great concentration in a specific place, many people come to look for job there. Visually, the communication expenses can be shared. The activities of essential services sector multiply, providing more advantages to firm in the industrialized area. And third one, economies related to the society. The provision of roads, schools, etc. is largely the responsibility of the state. Industrialization increases the provision of these items, increasing giving further advantage to firm in the area. Diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies of scale refer to an economic concept referring to a situation in which economies of scale no longer function for a firm. Rather than experiencing continued decrease in cost per increase in output, firms see an increase in marginal cost when output is increased. These are the forces that cause larger firms and government to produce goods and services at increased per unit cost. So, causes of diseconomies of scale. The causes of diseconomies of scale are as follows. First one, complexity. Second one, coordination. Third one, miscommunication. Fourth one, labor intensity. And fifth one, worker dissatisfaction. Sixth one, bureaucracy. First cause, complexity. The economists imagine states that complexity in a big organization can negate cost savings, causing diseconomies of scale. Such complexity also dissuades passion in business. According to the famous professor of management, Frederick, who said such passion was more important than sheer numbers, Frederick implied that innovation and interest in one's work was more valuable than size. So, next one, coordination. Managerial problems are often specific to diseconomies of scale. Especially, managers have a harder time to coordinating tasks and processes. This leads to a loss of competitive advantage that might otherwise be gained by a large corporation. Inefficiencies may be hidden from management or may be a result of mismanagement or experience with scale. Third one, miscommunication. Miscommunication at big firms can be a common simply because of the sheer number of employees. Multiple locations creates communication and supply chain difficulties. Diseconomies of scale also occurs when large amount of information must be distributed among many employees, where the company's message or business plan can be diluted. Labor intensity. Corporations are not the only entities to encounter diseconomies of scale. In a Harvard Kennedy School study, Chris Pineda found that because city governments engages in labor intensive services, economies of scale are harder to reach than in a pure production environment. Pineda found that services such as police and fire protection and public works were not easily replicated, and this can be the source of diseconomies of scale in proposed local government dissolutions. Fifth one, workers' dissatisfaction. Workers may lose their sense of self in a large company. If workers are unhappy, this can cause or at the very least aggregate diseconomies of scale. Worker dissatisfaction may be due to repeated miscommunication or inefficiencies common to the big firm. Bureaucracy. Pineda also notes that government bureaucrats may be particularly ill equipped to manage large organizations. This means that diseconomies of scale occur when public officials misclues about residents' needs or budgetary inefficiencies. Pineda thus inferred that diseconomies of scale are particularly likely in public sector. So this is about economies of scale, internal economies of scale and external economies of scale, and also diseconomies of scale.